Well, Browns fans, where to even begin? Live from New Orleans, it's Spencer German with you. Anthony Moeglin, obviously, alongside as we report to you from New Orleans, where the Browns lose 35-14 in a game, weirdly enough, that was tied at 14 going into the fourth quarter, and then the Browns went on to be outscored 21-14 in that, or 21-0 in that final quarter, and they lose the game 35-14. Just kind of a weird outcome in a game that, listen, it felt like for a while the Saints had a lot of the momentum, but in the end, the Browns put up a hell of a fight, and it felt like they were going to make something of it late, and then it just didn't come to fruition. Jameis Winston was brilliant. He was 30 of 46 for 395 yards and 2 touchdowns. It was his day. It was supposed to kind of be his day because he was coming back to New Orleans, where obviously he had played the last 4 years prior to coming to Cleveland, and he put on an absolute show. And it's unfortunate because when a quarterback puts on up those types of numbers, you think that your team probably comes out victorious, but that was not the case for the Browns today, Anthony.
Just another Browns finding a new way to lose stat of the day, right? Like first for 395 yards. We don't turn the football over. We forced 2 turnovers, especially close to the red area. Denzel Ward with a huge strip and fumble recovery. And then you still lose by 3 scores. Like it doesn't make sense how they lost today. And it was just like if we were still in contention, if the Browns were still in any type of contention, this would be like a backbreaker. The flip side of it is like the season's over, and it just was another like laugher of like, I cannot believe we're finding new ways and inventing new ways to lose.
Well, the season was pretty much already over, but yeah, I mean, this just kind of added insult to injury. And yeah, I mean, I think it was disappointing because like you're finally seeing a quarterback play at a high level in this offense. You're finally seeing the offense take off. I understand the Chargers game wasn't great. That was kind of the evil, like there's Jameis, and then there's like his evil twin Jameis, who's the one that throws all the interceptions. Like he has kind of 2 different versions of himself, and you never know which one you're going to get. But this was more of the good Jameis, and he did it on a stage that obviously meant a lot to him. He talked post game about just how much coming back here meant, the relationships he still has, you know, even the stadium workers that he kind of crossed paths with and saw, and all these different things. And so yeah, like there was a lot of reason for excitement around Jameis' performance today, and it just is unfortunate that it gets sort of spoiled by another Browns kind of dud performance. And there were some elements of this game that were reminiscent of other games this season that we'll get into. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to describe, man, because you get a performance like that, you think your team generally has a chance to win. Jameis was awesome. You know, the offense didn't do everything well, but you expected more in a game that was 14-14 going into the fourth quarter, and to get outscored 21-0. I mean, that last stanza sort of defined the game, and you know it's unfortunate. It also points to something Wyatt Teller talked about afterwards, which is like we got to learn to finish these games. Like even the games that we're in, we still find ways to lose, and that's not gonna. That's why you're 2-8.
Yeah, and everything that happened today was the mark of a bad football team, right? You had horrible special teams. Like this is now a couple weeks in a row where special teams has been bad. Dustin Hopkins, I don't know if we caught like a Jeremy Lin style Linsanity type of year last year where he just made everything, and now this year he kind of turned back into a pumpkin and is like, not only is he like not good, he's more trending towards being bad, and that's really upsetting and really concerning. And then you know you can't finish a football game, right? Good teams find ways to win football games. The Saints are not a good football team. They're losers of 7 in a row. They haven't done anything. They've been anemic. They've been bad. They fired their head coach. They're all of the things, and then they come out and hey, everybody knew Taysom Hill was this gadget type dude. How does he do what he did today? He had nearly 200 yards of total offense. He rushed for a ton. He had that game-sealing 75-yard touchdown, and it wasn't like he was doing anything great. You know, go back and watch some of it. The Browns were just out of position constantly. The defense looked woefully unprepared. They were schemed to death by Clint Kubiak, and it was just like everything that went wrong was the mark of a bad football team, and that's just what we have in Cleveland. And it sucks because you're seeing what the team could be, right? Jameis Winston, a competent quarterback, throwing the football around. Jerry Jeudy, 6 catches, 142 and a score, like looked explosive. Elijah Moore, turns out he's a good receiver when you give him a chance. David Njoku, 9 catches on 9 targets. Like all of the things on offense were going well, but you just have to be a 3-phase football team, and the Browns aren't.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there from what you just said. I'll start with the fact that on top of Jameis playing well, yeah, you mentioned it. Jerry Jeudy had a tremendous game. He had the 89-yard touchdown reception, which was the fourth longest touchdown in franchise history. First play, by the way, for the Browns this season of 40 or more yards, which is kind of remarkable when you think about the fact that you're in Week 11 and you hadn't had a play like that. Obviously, there was a play like that in the Raiders game that got called back, the Amari Cooper catch that went for a touchdown. But yeah, that obviously didn't end up counting. So it is what it is. But yeah, like he looked really good today. Jameis was finding him a lot. You also had, as you mentioned, Elijah Moore had that really impressive touchdown catch, toe tapped along the back of the end zone or the side of the end zone. It was fantastic stuff for a guy that's had clearly a frustrating season by his standards. Like he wants to be doing more than he's doing. I thought it was really great to see him put up the performance he did today, get that touchdown. And another thing that Jameis talked about after the game, they pretty much got everybody, like all the offensive skill positions, they all got involved pretty much in some way. Jerome Ford was out there running around a little bit on top of Nick Chubb. You had Pierre Strong get in the mix a little bit. You had David Njoku have a pretty solid day today. Even guys like Jamari Thrash, the rookie wide receiver, saw his first snaps as a rookie this year. So they really were like utilizing everybody. It was an all-inclusive effort. It just, for some reason, ended. Oh, Kadarius Toney.
Yes.
How can I forget about Kadarius Toney? They used Kadarius Toney. Now the first and maybe only time he touched the ball was one of the classic end-around plays that the Browns like to run that went for like -7 yards. So it wasn't a great play, but they at least tried to get him involved today. So yeah, like it's just crazy in a day where it seemed like the offense was doing a lot of good things. Somehow, some way, it only ended with 14 points. And I think that goes back to, again, what Wyatt Teller said about just finishing games in general, but also finishing drives with touchdowns or points, which there's reasons for that not happening today as well. But
I would also add, while it was great that Jameis was throwing the ball well and he played really, really good, you drop him back 46 times, you're not going to win many football games. And that's kind of the state of the Browns team.
Yeah.
That's why they're 2-8. They rushed for 66 yards on 20 carries. Like, that's not going to get it done. And in the teams in the past couple of years, Spence, that have been successful, right, under Kevin, have been run first. And obviously it's been Nick Chubb being a superstar and the offensive line having a lot of the same cast of characters that are here, Wyatt Teller, Joel Bitonio, Ethan Posick, but they all were young. I think that this group up front is now older, especially in the more important parts, and they cannot run the football. They can't figure it out. It's a mixture of Ken Dorsey having an impact in on it. Kevin maybe losing a little bit of his influence, but whatever it is, your inability to run the football is causing a lot of these problems because you can't just straight drop back in the NFL and expect to win.
And Joe Bitonio talked about that a little bit post game, just that they are more of a pass first team. But Wyatt Teller also alluded to the fact that he doesn't think they're executing the way that they need to in the run game. And that's why you're seeing a lot of the inconsistencies with how much they're able to sort of do. But listen, like that's going to be even more problematic, both passing and running, when you consider the major injury that the team suffered today. DeJuan Jones leaving the field on the cart, broken ankle, I believe is what it is. Kevin Stefanski I take that back. Kevin Stefanski didn't want to specify what part of the leg it was specifically, but he did say it's a fracture in his left leg of some sort, and that he's going to miss the rest of the season. Which, like, the reason this becomes problematic, Anthony, it's not just short term, which is their ability to do certain things, protect the quarterback, run the football. When you don't have that left tackle spot, obviously Jedrick Wills was inactive today because he had a flare up in his knee. We'll see if he's healthy in time to play against the Steelers on Thursday. So on one hand, like, you have somebody that you can turn to that's played the position before, like for at least the rest of this season. But the bigger issue from my perspective is what this means long term, because the whole reason you put DeJuan Jones there was to sort of see what he could do at the left tackle spot and if he could be your left tackle of the future. And now you don't have. Now you only have 3 games to really evaluate that, and that sort of sets the stage for, as we talk about the offseason and where they go in the draft. If they're thinking quarterback, if they're thinking tackle, like that might make that position a higher priority. It's just a fracture, so it's not like he's going to have like a year-long recovery here. Like he'll be back sooner than some of these serious knee injuries and things. but you don't have the full picture of what he can do at that position because you're only going to get him for these 3 games. And so that sort of throws a wrench into those plans now.
Yeah, it's just wildly disappointing on all of those fronts, and you feel your heart breaks for the kid, right? I mean, this is a young guy; it's his second year in the league. He found some success last year at right tackle, and we thought, hey, you have your right tackle of the future, and then he comes out this year and regresses significantly before turning over to the left side and looking like he has the tools to be one of those guys at left tackle that you build around. And even Joe Thomas had talked about it earlier in the week. Like, he's got the tools to do it. And, he's building some confidence and doing all that. And this was a great opportunity for him, a job interview, if you will, to just get real life experience with literally no stakes. Like, if he were to mess up, fine, you're good. Like, it's not, but if he were to be successful, now you're talking about becoming, solving a huge problem for this Browns team, and also financially on his side of things, becoming a left tackle, which, you're making a ton of money doing that. It just really sucks for the kid, and you feel your heart breaks for him because you feel really bad.
Yeah, and he was playing pretty well. I mean, I know the PFF scores weren't great, but that's not always the end-all be-all. He looked like he could hold his own out there. It looked like he was learning each and every single week to be a little bit better. And again, it was an important. This team has said they're prioritizing winning the rest of the season, but we know that they're sort of trying to find that middle ground between winning and still being able to evaluate some guys. And that was one of the biggest positions and one of the biggest players that they were, I guess, literally and figuratively, because DeJuan Jones is a massive human being. But like, that was one of the biggest spots that they wanted to evaluate and get a better sense of what they had, what they need to do or address this offseason. And now you lose that. On the flip side, you brought up Taysom Hill, and I think we need to go there next because the offense was solid around Jameis aside from finishing off drives of points. And there is an element to that, which we'll get into in regards to the special teams and Dustin Hopkins. But before we get to that, like, this felt like the same reasons the Browns have lost 7 other games coming into today felt like the same reasons why they ended up losing today. It was Taysom Hill running wild for 206 scrimmage yards, and I guess in total, because he did throw a couple passes too. But like, it was him fine, and he caught a couple passes. But like, it was him doing these things that the Browns were prepared for, because they talked all week about Taysom Hill and the Swiss Army knife of a player that he was, and that they had to account for him at all times. And then here he is running free for a 75-yard touchdown. Yeah. Here he is catching a touchdown. Here he is running for a 30-yard touchdown. Like, it was his show, and you saw a lot of missed tackles. Like, that's been a just problem for this team all season long, is their inability to get guys down at first contact. And it reared its ugly head today. It was a problem. I kind of joked earlier on Twitter, like, Taysom Hill both tried to give the game away to the Browns because he threw that interception and then he fumbled. And then he also single-handedly won the game for the Saints, which is just wild to think about how good he was, that he was able to make up for 2 big mistakes for this on the Saints end of things and just make it not even matter because he did what he did today. Just that's a problem. Like, that is a massive oversight, a massive lack of dropping the ball here, I guess, by this defense. Like, to have these same problems persist. They talk so much about, like, we're going to fix these things, we're going to get better, and then they don't. I don't know where you go from here, man. And I don't know if, like, year to year tackling can just change, but the missed tackles continue to be a problem. There's and maybe some blown coverages were sort of in play here as well, because the first touchdown pass not the first touchdown pass, but the big touchdown pass, the 71-yarder to Marquez Valdes-Scantling, it looked like maybe there was only one guy back sort of in coverage who was on that side of the field, and then he was able to kind of run free, and there was nobody to rally to make the play. So it's just like the same costly mistakes that we've seen week after week or over the course of several games. They just rear their ugly head with that side of the ball, and it's got to be frustrating at this point.
Yeah, and another one is the one that cost you a couple massive plays against the Chargers a few weeks ago, where your secondary just fails to communicate to each other, or are on two completely different pages. That touchdown to MVS, 2 guys were playing a cover 3 type zone where they were way back, and then your safety is in the middle of the field. Maybe he falls on a run fake, maybe he triggers on something, but he just totally abandons his responsibility. Like, you're not going to make a TFL from 15 yards back. You don't need to be there. What you need to do is have good discipline, stay back in your coverage, and then go make a tackle and not quit on the play. Like there were so many things like in just that one play where you're like, holy cow, this is why this team refuses to win. Because guess what, Spence? You finally seized momentum. You're up in the game. You're playing good. You come out and get a stop, get it back to your offense. And Jameis, literally his hand was on fire. Like he was like everything was going well. And you just blow it just because it's a team. Everything that they do is the mark of a bad football team. Like, and when you talk getting into like the details of why New Orleans was successful today, they just used Jim Schwartz's aggressiveness against him, like something we've seen week in and week after week after week. You're going to play man coverage. You're going to line up, and our guys are going to be better than yours. Well, guess what? That works in high school, and sometimes that works at low-level college. You can't line up on an NFL football field and say, I'm playing man-to-man coverage and not expect to get exposed like they got exposed today. And it was just – I'm pissed, but obviously I'm getting it off my chest because it's just so frustrating.
Well, along the lines of playing a lot of man too, I think again we saw today that motion is a problem for this team. Like there was a stretch early in this game, and someone's going to have to fact check me on this, but I'm pretty sure that like I don't know, I want to say it was like early second quarter. I tweeted something along the lines of like, I don't think I've seen one play yet, and I probably did miss a few plays here or there in that stretch, but I don't think I'd seen a play to that point that didn't have some sort of pre-snap motion for the Saints, whether it was Alvin Kamara going across the formation or somebody just kind of like being outside then checking down to the end of the line or whatever it was. Like they were constantly doing that. And it's funny because juxtaposed to the Browns offense which was supposed to be all about motion, and they've used like they're one of the teams that use the least amount of motion in the NFL to this point. The Saints were like motion wizards today in Clint Kubiak's system, and it was incredible. And that's what I think opened up a lot of different things because guys are watching their guy and they get kind of lost in the wash, and all of a sudden somebody's running for a big touchdown or whatever it might be. So yeah, like like that continues to be a problem. They don't handle motion well, and the missed tackles. It's just all of it. And listen, Jim Schwartz is one of the best defensive coordinators in football. I stand by that. I don't think largely like he's the problem here, but it is going to be about the results on that side of the ball. Mm-hmm. And if anyone's going to hold their team to it, it's going to be him. But yeah, like that's frustrating. And it's funny, like you mentioned, guys maybe quitting on plays. Every time we talk to the guys in the locker room about like, are guys going to quit? How are they going to sort of keep moving and going forward? They all seem to suggest like, we're a veteran team. We're not going to quit. And Miles kind of alluded to that today. He doesn't think it's about a lack of effort, but he was asked specifically about what he needs, like how this team stays motivated for the rest of the season. And I thought he gave a pretty strong answer in regards to why guys need to continue to sort of play hard despite the fact that they're 2-8 and everything that they were hoping to accomplish is clearly out the window at this point. Let's play this audio real quick and we'll react on the other side.
Legacy. I play this game to be the very best there is. I expect everyone else to play because they love it. Play because they want to be remembered for something. Whether they're 2-8, whether they're 8-2, this will be remembered for years to come. People be filmed. People will speak about you, and you'll have to look yourself in the mirror, knowing that your effort and what you put on tape is going to decide what's going to happen for your career and for the years to come. And when I said put it out there, I expect to do the very best job I possibly can, and I expect that of everyone else who's out there with me.
I thought those were some pretty strong words. And coming from Myles Garrett, a guy who obviously is thinking more about like big picture legacy. He's not just tied up in, the year to year results. He's like, hey man, like I want a gold jacket one day. I want to win a Super Bowl. Like that's where his mind goes. You would think that those types of messages are getting through to the team where they won't quit, but you obviously just never know when you're in a 2-8 situation, what's going to sort of transpire the rest of the year. Mm-hmm. But Miles is one of the bigger voices on this team, and hopefully those words ring true.
Yeah, I mean it's hard, right? You're 2-8, or the season's over for all intents and purposes. But these guys are professionals; they are getting paid to do this. This is their job. This is their livelihood. So you do appreciate the fact that guys like Jameis Winston hold people accountable. Guys like everyone up front. Like I don't think anything about this team can be questioned in terms of effort, which is actually really cool. Like a lot of teams, you see it a lot a lot of teams quit on the season and they just kind of pack it in and shut it all the way down. I don't think this team's there yet. This was a really cool, I think, response from from Miles too. And this is a little bit of a reach, but it's funny juxtaposed to what Mike Tyson said the other day. I don't know if you saw the clip on Twitter about legacy, but if you haven't,
the one where he was saying that he was answering it, he was like swearing with a kid asking
with
a question,
like an 8-year-old with like a little.
What the hell, Mike Tyson?
Like, holy cow, dude! But
has some censorship, dude. Like, come on.
That's a curveball there, but really cool to hear Miles say that, and you see him kind of putting his money where his mouth is. He doesn't just talk the talk; he walks it. And at least they're trying to still compete, which is good.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, Miles can only speak for himself, can only control his actions. And again, like in a season that's gone this poorly, you just never know what's going to happen. But yeah, I think when Miles speaks, people tend to listen. Fans, players on the team, whatever it might be. And for him to sort of make that point, and he's talked about legacy before, but for him to make that point, like, it should sort of reign supreme here, but it's going to be a tough sort of thing to navigate the rest of the way when you're 2-8 and everything that you were hoping to accomplish is obviously out the window. And we'll just have to see how the team responds. And they obviously have a short week to try to respond because they got the Steelers coming in on Thursday, which we will talk about here in a second. But I want to circle one other point from this game, which was the special teams continued to be a problem for this group. And yes, it's Dustin Hopkins missing technically 3 field goals today. Only 2 of them counted, but one of them he missed from 32 yards. And then there's a 5-yard holding penalty on the defense that gives him a second shot after they take a couple shots at the end zone. And then he misses it again from 27 yards, which was just mind-numbingly confusing what's happened to Dustin Hopkins. The 50-yard plus kicks that he was nailing last year that felt like gimmies are no longer gimmies. This is a guy that the Browns, by the way, gave an extension to at the beginning of earlier this summer to make sure he was kind of their kicker of the future. And he's had some misses this year, but today's a day where like you're not even kicking at Cleveland Browns Stadium, you're kicking in a dome. It's a controlled environment. Like what's going on there? And then on top of that, like the long punt return by Pettis, like we're seeing these types of issues week in, week out. There was the long kickoff in the Bengals game that they returned. Like it's just the same sort of issues repeating itself. And I don't know what the resolution is, but like it feels like Bubba Ventrone is, because Bubba Ventrone's, I think, a great coach, one of the best special teams coaches in this game. But for whatever reason, his units aren't getting the job done. And the reason why he was brought in the first place was because those units weren't getting the job done. It's crazy that the special teams has kind of reverted back to pre-Kevin Stefanski, or I guess early Kevin Stefanski years under Mike Prefer.
Well, dude, and it also goes, those are definitely the ones that stand out. Like, everybody, I encourage you to go outside, walk 27 steps and kick a ball straight. Like anybody listening to this, me and Spence, you could walk out on the field and make that right now. Like that is not a hard
I don't know about
pick.
that. I mean, I see the guys on Pat McAfee's college game day kick just absolutely just pooch it to the left. So I don't know if I'm going to give myself enough credit to make a 27-yard field goal, but maybe.
But Spence, going even deeper into the special teams problems, we can't return kickoffs. Every time whoever it is, there's a new kickoff.
He was asked about that this week, by the way. He said he thought like they've done a pretty good job given the new rule. But you're right. Like it seems like every other team is like finding a couple of ones that they break for a little bit more, and the Browns just haven't.
And explain to me why there's a different guy returning kicks every time, every kick. It's Pierre Strong, it's Jerome Ford, and yes, you want to use running back. I'm cool with that, but put one back there and just let him do it. Let him return kicks. That's fine. You don't return punts. And then again today, not only did they have that long punt return, which thankfully the guy stepped a toenail out of bounds, but they gave up Taysom Hill out of 50-yard kickoff return. And that stuff, those hidden yards add up, and they add up in a bad way. It is deflating as hell for an offense to come out on the field and be inside the 20-yard line. It is the worst thing in the world to do it time after time after time. Like the Browns had 2 90-plus yard scoring drives. Today, that doesn't happen. I don't care if it's Patrick Mahomes, Jameis Winston, or me playing quarterback. That doesn't happen consistently. And the fact that they can't get any advantage at all in special teams is a very, very big problem. And now that Dustin Hopkins is missing kicks, you're like, this is a huge concern, and it's got to be fixed. I mean, not for this year, but for the years to come, because how many times do you see a playoff game change or an important football game change on special teams? And the Browns special teams are not good at all.
Yeah, and those 2 field goals, maybe they make a difference, maybe they don't. It would have late in that game, you would have been leading going into the fourth quarter. If he at least had made one of those, it would have been 17-14 most likely. If he had made both, you're up 20-14, and so maybe things go a little bit differently. You play things a little bit differently. Who knows? But it's frustrating because last year he was automatic. I thought he earned the extension that he got, and this year he just hasn't lived up to it. Part of that probably is like year-to-year kickers can sort of be fluid. I mean, look at Justin Tucker this year. He missed 2 field goals today for the Ravens. So it happens. But we thought that the Browns had sort of resolved that problem, and maybe that's the biggest thing is we thought the Browns had found their kicker. They spent more than a decade after Phil Dawson retired, like looking for that position. They finally thought they had one, and now it's sort of opening up this can of worms where you're questioning that again.
And the Ravens-Steelers game is a perfect example of what can happen, right? Justin Tucker misses 2 kicks. They lose by 2 points, right? Like that, and that's going to change that changes the
Meanwhile,
dynamic.
Chris Boswell made what, 6 field goals?
6 field goals.
6 for 6.
Literally kickers right across the street from us, and we're going to see the team next week. Boswell's become, and you thought that's what you found, right? You thought that you found a Boswell-type cat who, Boswell started with the Giants, had a shaky start to his career, goes to Pittsburgh. What does everybody do when they go to Pittsburgh? They become a great football player. And now he's one of the best kickers in the league. The Browns thought they had that with D-Hop, and now you're stuck.
Yeah, you know what? If I covered the Steelers, I might feel better about my chances of making a 27-yard field goal because there's just something about that organization that like rubs off on you. Like somehow Mike Tomlin's aura would just make
voodoo,
me.
It's the Steelers.
I don't know.
It's the Steelers voodoo, man, and we're gonna have to face that on coming Thursday because it started against the Ravens on the first drive, second play of the game. Derrick Henry hasn't fumbled in 500 carries, and he fumbles on the first drive, and it's like, here we go again because that damn organization's always got things going in the right direction.
Well, let's talk about that next. Not necessarily like a preview of the game, but like there was multiple guys asked afterwards if the short week. I'm sure health-wise it doesn't benefit them, but if it benefits them after a loss where, okay, we got a quick turnaround, we don't have time to like rest on this one, we go right back to work and get ready for a game in basically 4 days. And guys kind of gave some credence to the idea that like, yeah, it helps, but obviously losing in general sucks, and we don't like coming off the loss ever.
Yeah.
But listen, like that Steelers team is coming in, and maybe they're playing a little better than people expected they would be playing, but like. Man, have they've sort of in a season where they have a very tough schedule, especially down the stretch here. They have all their division games still to play coming into today. They have set themselves up in great position to maybe win this division. Obviously, they're in great position to make the playoffs in the AFC. But like, as much as maybe it's good to sort of shake this one off. It's not like your opponent's getting easier. This was supposed to be like one of the last ones on your schedule that was not. I don't want to say a gimme because when you're 2-8, nothing's, or when you're 2-7, nothing's a gimme coming in. But like this felt like one. Like okay, maybe the Browns can win this one off of the bye week, get some momentum, and then who knows what they can do from here. And we've seen them beat good teams. They beat the Ravens a couple weeks ago. But man, like as you talk about the Steelers schedule being tough, the Browns schedule now looks like an absolute gauntlet, as we kind of expected. And there's a legitimate question of like, will they win another game the rest of the year if the problems that we saw persist today continue to persist? I mean, even the Dolphins game that looked almost like it was like an easier matchup all of a sudden. The Dolphins have now won 2 in a row and are like back in the playoff picture. So it's just, who really knows what the rest of this remaining schedule looks like? I guess a lot of that revolves around the conversation we had earlier. Guys not quitting on the team and still trying to play hard through the rest of the year. But like, yeah, like it's the Steelers, and it's a chance to like feel good about something if you win, but it could have just ended up being another loss because that team is really, really good.
Well, they're really good, but I think one of the things that outside of the things that Miles talked about, legacy and all that stuff, one of the things you can really hang your hat on in the Brown situation is just their ability to play spoiler, right? This is an opportunity for the Brown. They got the Steelers twice. They're going to have the Bengals. They're going to have the Ravens coming up. They got the Chiefs. And like you said, the Dolphins, like out of their finishing 8 games now, they're going to have, or 7 games, excuse me, they're going to have a chance to put a significant damper on somebody's season. And for the Steelers coming in, for whatever reason, the Browns seem to play really good on Thursday Night Football. Whatever it is, it's always fun. That stadium's rocking all the time. It's going to be a cool environment. But the Steelers not only have a legit chance to just win the AFC North, they are 2 games back of Kansas City, who's losing to the Bills right now. So like
that's crazy.
They got the 1 seed in their mind, right?
And they still play the Chiefs. So yes. if they get close and there's a head-to-head,
So
can you imagine the Steelers as the 1 seed? Who saw that coming?
Who saw it coming? Who saw that coming? And does it surprise you? Like, honestly, like Mike Tomlin, we were talking about this before we went on air.
They'll probably win the AFC and then they'll lose in the first round.
Well,
that's the Mike Tomlin special.
But Spence, this kind of builds off the thing we were talking about before we hit start to the show. Is like he went 9-8 with Kenny Pickett twice. Like he's got a decent quarterback now, and now you're seeing it. Like this group can go, and they have pieces everywhere, but the Browns have played them tough in Cleveland all the last handful of years. Kevin Stefanski does not roll over, whether it's with Baker or with Deshaun or with Jacoby Brissett or with Joe Flacco, whomever it may be. The Browns always play them tough, and you have a cool opportunity Thursday night to put a real damper on the Steelers season that feels like nothing at all can stop them.
Yeah, it's that kind of is. It feels like what the motivations for the rest of the season are. It's about beating some of these teams and sort of making some statements. In the same breath, I'm sure there's lots of fans who are saying, we don't want to win anyway because we want a higher pick. So that's a fan way of thinking. We know the team's not thinking that way. But we'll be right back doing this type of conversation in a couple of days from now. By the way, last time the Browns did play on Thursday, to Anthony's point on them playing well on Thursdays, was the playoff clinching win over the New York Jets last December. So maybe there is some good juju in that stadium still left over that helps them produce a win over the Steelers. I honestly wonder, I feel like at this point, maybe that's one of the only good things left for fans to feel is like if they can somehow beat the Steelers on Thursday, if they can somehow sweep the Steelers this season and have that sort of as bragging rights in the offseason, I'm sure they'd feel good about that. But yeah, at this point, guys, it's a 2-8 season that continues to just spiral given the same problems persisting throughout this team and out on the football field that you see behind me here at the Superdome. So, all right, guys, we have taken up a lot of your time. We appreciate those of you who stopped by to hang out with us. As always, I want to encourage you to head on over to si.com/NFL/Browns. At the bottom of the little scroll there, you can see the link there, or you can see the website domain there. And check out all of our written content. We got stuff on DeJuan Jones's injury. My post-game story went up right as the game went final. And we'll have some other stuff here coming from just post-game comments, things that were said in the locker room afterwards over at the website. We also encourage you to subscribe and follow along at the Cleveland Browns on SI YouTube channel, where you can find more content like this, post-game press conference. I think Meg's got all the posts. Did you get all the post-game posted already?
They're all up.
Look at you. Anthony Moeglin, man.
The Jameis one is a must watch for anybody who needs to listen to something tomorrow morning on your drive or on the workout or whatever it is. Pop that Jameis one.
Wyatt Teller too, because Wyatt Teller tried to channel his inner Jameis Winston and cited a biblical verse in one of his Insters. So if you want to hear Wyatt Teller throw out some preaches or some sermons, much like Jameis Winston, you can find it at the Cleveland Browns on SI YouTube channel. So I encourage you to go over there as well. We appreciate you guys stopping on by with us. We'll be back with more coverage this week, leading up to that matchup with the Steelers of your Cleveland Browns. For Anthony Moeglin, I'm Spencer German. We'll talk to you guys soon.